In the heart of Texas, there lived a man named Jack Thompson. He was a simple man, content with the quiet life he had built on his ranch. With his rugged cowboy appearance, he looked every bit the Texan he was. Jack spent his days tending to his cattle, fixing fences, and gazing at the vast expanse of the Lone Star State. He cherished the solitude, the whispering winds, and the warmth of the Texan sun. Jack's life hadn't always been so tranquil. He had been a city boy, a lawyer in Houston before the bright lights and the hustle and bustle had lost their luster. It was there that he had met his wife, Sarah, a stunning woman with fiery red hair and an air of mystery about her. One fateful summer afternoon, Jack was working on mending a fence when he felt a sudden sharp pain in the back of his head. His vision blurred, and he collapsed to the ground unconscious. When he awoke, he found himself in a dimly lit room, his hands bound with Ralph Corsi rope. Panic surged through him as he realized he had been kidnapped. But the worst part was that he had no idea who had taken him or why. Days turned into weeks, and then into months, and still, Jack had no answers. He was given barely enough food and water to survive, and his captors never spoke a word. The only comfort he had was the occasional glimpse of a small, tattered photograph that had been left in his cell. It was a picture of a little girl with bright blue eyes and a gap-toothed smile. He couldn't help but wonder who she was and why it had been left for him to see. After 500 agonizing days in captivity, Jack's life took an unexpected turn. He was startled awake one night by the sound of footsteps approaching his cell. The door creaked open, and a small figure stepped inside. It was a little girl, no older than 7 or 8, with the same bright blue eyes as the girl in the photograph. "Are you okay?" the girl whispered, her voice trembling. Jack was too stunned to respond at first, but when he finally found his voice, he whispered back, "Who are you? How did you get in here?" "I'm Emma," she replied. "I'm here to help you escape." Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the fearless little girl produce a small knife from her pocket and cut his bonds. "How did you find me, Emma?" he asked, still bewildered. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "I'm your daughter, Daddy. Mommy did bad things, and I wanted to save you." The world spun around Jack as he tried to make sense of what Emma had just revealed. His daughter? He hadn't seen her since she was just a baby. He had no idea that she even existed. "Emma, sweetheart," he said, tears welling up in his eyes. "I had no idea you were out there. I thought your mother—" "Mommy did bad things," Emma interrupted. "She told me you were in trouble, and I needed to help you. She doesn't know I'm here." As Jack and Emma hatched a plan to escape, he couldn't help but wonder what had led his wife, Sarah, to commit such a terrible crime. He had always known she was a complex and enigmatic woman, but he never imagined she could be capable of something like this. With Emma's help, Jack managed to evade his captors and make their way to safety. It was a dangerous journey, full of close calls and narrow escapes, but their bond as father and daughter gave them the strength to persevere. They eventually reached the nearest town, where Jack contacted the authorities and explained the entire ordeal. The local sheriff was shocked by the story and immediately launched an investigation into Sarah Thompson, who had been living a double life as a loving mother and a kidnapper. It didn't take long for them to locate her and apprehend her. Jack and Emma watched from a distance as Sarah was arrested. Her eyes met Jack's for a brief moment, and he saw a mixture of regret and desperation in them. He couldn't fathom what had driven her to commit such a heinous act, but he knew that he couldn't forgive her for what she had put him through. During the trial, the full extent of Sarah's crimes was revealed. She had been involved in a criminal organization that had kidnapped Jack for ransom, but when the ransom demands went unanswered, they had simply kept him captive, assuming he was of no further use to them. Sarah had been a willing participant in the scheme, driven by greed and the desire for a new life with the money they had hoped to extort. As the evidence against her mounted, Sarah's demeanor shifted from defiant to remorseful. She pleaded guilty to her charges, sparing Jack and Emma the pain of a lengthy trial. The judge sentenced her to a long prison term, and she was led away in handcuffs. With Sarah behind bars, Jack and Emma began the process of rebuilding their lives. It was a challenging journey filled with therapy sessions and difficult conversations, but their love for each other was unbreakable. They moved back to Jack's ranch in Texas, where they worked together to heal the wounds of the past. Over time, Jack and Emma grew closer than ever before. They discovered shared interests, bonded over their love for the ranch, and created new memories together. Jack marveled at the remarkable young woman Emma was becoming, and he thanked whatever higher power had brought her into his life when he needed her the most. Years passed, and Emma grew into a strong, resilient young woman. She had her father's determination and a newfound sense of purpose. Together, they decided to open their ranch to troubled youth, providing a safe haven for those in need of a fresh start. They named it the Thompson Redemption Ranch, in honor of the second chance they had been given. As for Jack, he couldn't be prouder of the daughter who had saved him, not just from captivity, but from a life of loneliness and despair. He knew that the bond they shared was unbreakable, forged in the crucible of their shared ordeal. In the end, their story was one of redemption, forgiveness, and the unbreakable bond between a father and his daughter. Through the darkest of times, they had found their way back to each other, and together, they had built a life filled with hope, love, and the promise of a brighter future in the heart of Texas.